All right, friends, thank you so much for joining us here today for our Land Use and Environment Committee. I'm Lane Nordland with Western Ag Network, happy to serve as your MC for the next few days. Just some details we need to go over here quickly before we turn it over to our chairman, Justin Iverson, but we'd just like to once again welcome you to our online virtual convention. And when it comes to bringing forward policy during this committee meeting, you must submit the proposed policy through the chat feature on the right portion of your computer screen. Now, once that proposed policy is submitted in the chat, you will click on the share audio and voice button to ask the moderator to grant you access to present the proposed policy live to viewers. Then you'll be able to answer questions from the viewers and explain in detail the proposed policy. Now, voting on policy will be done strictly through the chat feature on the right-hand side of your screen. Any eligible Montana Stockgrowers member who wishes to vote must be registered for our virtual convention, and you must type your full name and vote in the chat feature. So it must have your full first and last name and whether you vote yay or nay on the resolution or amendment. MSGA staff will then verify that the votes are counted and are from eligible Montana Stockgrowers voting members. Now, if you are gathering with multiple stockgrower members in one location to attend the virtual annual convention today, such as an affiliate group, all you have to do is all vote on that little chat feature still. So you must vote in the chat by listing out each person's name first and then last, and then if you vote yay or nay. To ask questions, you can either ask them through the session chat feature to your right, or you can request to share your audio and video with the moderator. There can be a maximum of 9 attendees sharing their screen at one time as well through our online platform. To ensure voting is done according to the Montana Stockgrowers bylines, I'm just making words up here today, bylaws, only correct voting submissions will be counted. But at this time, before we jump into our committee session, we will thank our sponsors for this year's convention.
Your livelihood depends on it, and you're feeding your family. Putting animals first, I think it's just a guiding principle.
We want our cattle to work really well in our environment. With insurance, accounting, tax, and consulting services customized to your needs, Woodley helps you overcome challenges, achieve your goals, and plan for a future success. Visit us at www.wipfli.com.
Man, that's where it all begins. Since 1946, we've handed down a legacy of excellence in quality rural real estate by cultivating long-term relationships built upon personal service and expert counsel. We continue to grow today because we're client-focused and results-oriented. And while it all starts with the land, we know it ends with you. All in all, trusted by generations for generations.
Farmers and ranchers, on behalf of Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and all Montana hunters and anglers, we'd like to say thanks. Thanks for providing habitat for Montana's fish and wildlife resources, and thanks for sharing your lands with Montana hunters and anglers. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, through its employees, citizen commission, and board, provides for the stewardship of fish, wildlife, parks, and recreational resources of Montana, while contributing to the quality of life for present and future generations. Please visit our website at fwp.mt.gov for more information about access and habitat programs available to private landowners.
All right, thank you so much to our sponsors of this year's virtual convention. And at this time, I will turn it over to one of the biggest MSU Bobcat fans around, Justin Iverson, to take over our Land Use and Environment Committee. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you, Wayne. And Bill Grant, as always, that's my input for this session every year. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, folks, for being here today. We appreciate your attendance online at our annual convention, as well as the Land Use and Environment Committee meeting. We're going to start off with our Water Committee. Rich Roth is chair, and Lawrence Grossfield are vice chair. They're not here today, but we're going to step in with a water update from the legislative side from Krista Lee Evans. Please welcome her.
Thank you for the invite. Those of you who know me know that I could probably talk for hours on water, but I've committed to Jay and Rayleigh that I'll keep this relatively short, of course, open for questions at the end. One of the big questions facing all of us prior to this legislative session is how the legislature is going to function. That is still up in the air so that everybody knows. They have their legislative orientation and caucus meetings starting tonight and for the next 2 days. So we should have some more information soon on how the Montana legislature will operate in 2021. So look for those of us working on agricultural water rights, reaching out to some of you for help potentially on policy issues as we move forward. I'm going to touch really briefly on a few of the bills that we know some details on. There's a number of water-related bills that are introduced, about 30 to date. Not a lot of drafting information, so not a lot of language associated with those water rights, or with those water rights, with those bill draft requests. Lane's had a bad influence on me. So I'll talk a little bit about the Water Policy Interim Committee, which is the committee that meets in between it meets in the interim between legislative sessions. And that committee is made up of legislators. And they have a number of bill draft proposals that are out that will be in front of the legislature that I think will be of interest to MSGA members. One of those is to revise the process for water right ownership updates. And I think the biggest takeaway from this bill draft and from the work that was conducted during the interim is that it is absolutely critical as sellers of property that we make sure that the water right ownership update form is completed accurately, because without that information from the seller, it becomes extremely complex, and we've seen some significant challenges and inaccuracy in water rights ownerships when the seller doesn't accurately reflect that in the sale process and in the ownership update form. So that bill draft is something that MSGA and other ag groups have worked on during the interim and would likely support throughout the process, depending on any amendments. The second bill draft that's coming out of the Water Policy Interim Committee is for weather modification and control laws. It's currently allowed under Montana law to cloud seed and to do other weather modification techniques. However, the barrier to entry is very significant. The committee worked on looking at different ways to amend the statute to lessen that barrier to entry, but to still allow and to require significant environmental protections and permitting requirements. And so that bill will be coming out as well to hopefully allow for additional weather modification projects everywhere from cloud seeding for snowmaking to reducing impacts from hail during the spring and summer. The next bill might seem like it's minor, and everybody kind of gets tired of hearing about the adjudication. This bill was to adjust the adjudication benchmarks. And this is important, and it's important to stock grower membership, because what this does is It extends the benchmark where DNRC and the water court have to complete the adjudication process and evaluating claims. It extends that by 1 year, and there's always a question on, do we slow down the adjudication? And if so, at what cost? And so this bill is an attempt to balance accuracy and expediency. And so for all of you who I've spoken to before, we've talked about the exempt from filing claims that were allowed up until July of 2019, I believe, maybe 2020. And what this bill does, that's coming out of the Water Policy Committee, is it allows for those claims to be included in decrees. And why does that matter to you guys as claimants and as water right owners? It means that you only have to go through one decree phase instead of the preliminary decree and final, and then a supplemental decree phase. So it's helpful in that you only have to go to court one time instead of two to address all those exempt from filing claims. The other interesting bill draft, and this came out of DNRC, is to provide an exemption from permit requirements for the use of water out of the Berkeley pit. So that's going to be interesting to see how that evolves during a legislative session. There's always concern whenever we have exemptions or exceptions to the permit process, since that is the mechanism that other water right owners can use to object and to protect their property right. And so we haven't seen the language on that bill draft yet, but that is out there. And the other looks like our first exempt well bill draft has been requested. And this has been requested by Senator Blaisdell, and this is one that we've seen before with regards to exempt well provisions on family transfers. And so we'll again have to see what that language looks like when that's available, and we can be in touch after that. But that's pretty much the high point. There is one other bill draft related to irrigation districts that was requested by DNRC that has to do with bonding authority for the irrigation districts and that voting process. So for any of you that are members of irrigation districts, that piece of legislation will be worth paying attention to. So anyway, that's where we're at on legislation that's pending. We'll of course continue to pay attention to all these requests as they come in and as language becomes available, so that we can make sure and protect your senior water rights while still allowing for future development in Montana. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
But if any pop out, I'll bring you back.
Thank you, Krista. Appreciate your input and all the work you do on our behalf, keeping us squared away on water rights. Krista's coming back up.
Yeah. So there is a question, and the question was, what is going on with CSKT? So the CSKT compact is a part of the Montana Water Rights Protection Act, which is Senate Bill 3019, requested by Senator Daines, that was passed unanimously out of the committee. And so where we're at right now is that legislation is moving forward, similar to any other piece of congressional legislation. They're identifying what types of other pieces of legislation it can be attached to. So it is still alive. And it kind of got hung up a little bit in the process with the elections and Congress recesses, but it is alive and moving forward. And we'll see what happens, if anything, during the lame duck.
Thank you, Krista. We're going to begin with our recommended review policies on the water subcommittee. We're going to do these en masse, meaning we will work through all of the policies that are recommended to be renewed. We will not have individual discussion on any one unless you see fit to bring it forward to us. Please mention it in the chat area of our program, and we'll set it aside at the end to have individual discussion. Otherwise, we're going to go through all of the renewals at the same time and vote en masse. We're going to start with WA 008, Citizen Water Quality Monitoring. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA opposes any such programs, and be it further resolved that any watershed monitoring programs be implemented by the conservation districts or the Department of Environmental Quality and adequately funded by the state and federal government. Next one, WA009, federal laws and state water rights. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA urges any federal legislation affecting the water resource protect and recognize the states' rights to allocate quantities of water and individual rights acquired under state law. Third, WA010, impaired stream designations. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA opposes the Planning, Prevention, and Assistance Division's general listing of streams as impaired without sufficient credible data as required by Montana law. Next up, WA020, split estate coal bed methane water. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA supports policies that, one, protects the rights of farm and ranch families who do not own their own mineral rights and are facing the prospect of oil and gas development on their land, to ensure they are given adequate notice of oil and gas leasing and development on their land, and to require the negotiation of surface damage agreements. Two, reduce the need for counties to take on the responsibility of overseeing bonding and reclamation requirements by establishing a statewide program. Three, ensure the protection of the beneficial use of ground and surface water resources beyond CBM development by adopting a framework for responsible management of CBM produced water that protects water quality under current law. Last one recommended for renew is WA025, DNRC water rights process. Be it recommended, MSGA pursues legislative or administrative rule changes to reduce the length of time and data required for the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation to process changes in a water right for point of diversion, place of use, and or purpose of use. If you would like any of those set aside, please let us know now. Otherwise, we will put this to a vote. We're seeing any? Okay, we would ask that you vote now. Please put your full name and yes or no after it in the chat. If you are in a group, make sure you list all of the names and their individual votes. For example, Justin Iverson and yes or no. Go ahead and please vote. Again, we are voting on renewing WA008, WA009, WA010, WA020, and WA025. 5 separate policies. Please send in your vote. None of these have been amended. They are recommended for review as they are. All voted yes. We're going to move ahead. We're going to move now to a recommended amend. This is WA007. Whereas there have been efforts towards centralized federal control and regulation of water quality decisions. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA works to include the following concepts in the Federal Clean Water Act. 1, water quality programs for non-point pollution be voluntary. 2, non-point pollution compliance be based upon implementation of best management practices. 3, best management practices be site-specific and developed at a local level. 4, adequate funding and technical assistance be provided for best management practices implementation, and be it further resolved, MSGA opposes any reauthorization or amendments to the Clean Water Act that does not substantially recognize the above principles. I would move that we vote on this. Again, this is a recommended amend to WA007, whereas there have been efforts towards centralized federal control and regulation of water quality decisions. Please send your votes in on the chat, full name, and how you vote. We are voting on the amendment of WA007, Federal Water Quality Act. Please send in your votes. Votes are coming in. Again, if you're in a room with multiple people, you need to list every person's name and their individual vote, please. Voting to amend WA 007. And it has passed. Excellent, very good, thank you. Moving ahead, we have a new resolution. During the summer meeting, the board of directors was told to come up with some water policy based on information that came to us at the summer meeting. And so I'm going to read through this. It's on water court jurisdiction, recommended by the Water Court Policy Committee. Whereas current statute allows for water rights holders to petition the district court or the water court for judicial review of a decision pertaining to a permit or change in appropriation right. And whereas district court judges are elected and water court judges are appointed. And whereas water court should continue its focus on a timely completion of adjudicating Montana's water rights. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA supports the water rights holder option to choose between district court and water court for judicial review. And be it further resolved, MSGA supports the use of district court over sole jurisdiction by the water court. I'm going to read the therefores again on the water court jurisdiction. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA supports the water right holder's option to choose between the district court and water courts for judicial review. And be it further resolved, MSGA supports the use of district court over sole jurisdiction by the water court. If you have discussion, please bring it up on the chat for us, and we'll bring it forward. Not seeing any discussion. Okay, we would like to put this towards a vote. Please send in your vote via the chat with your name and how you vote, yay or nay. In a room full of people, please list the name and each vote as it comes through. This is for water court jurisdiction. Please go ahead and vote. Again, we are voting on water court jurisdiction as recommended by the Water Court Policy Committee. Votes are coming in. Please send in your full name and how you vote. This is for water court jurisdiction. Votes are coming in. We are still collecting votes on the water court jurisdiction. This will be the last resolution under Water Committee. Good for now. Excellent. Looks like this has passed. Thank you very much. We're going to move ahead now to the Endangered Species Committee. Kirk Donsbach is chair. Kyle Middlemist is vice chair. Kirk, come to the table.
Thanks, Justin. Thank you, Justin. Kirk Donsbach, chair of the Endangered Species Subcommittee. We only have one resolution up today, ES 023, a recommended amend to the Livestock Loss Reduction Board. It was last revised in 2015, and it's to add mountain lions to the two whereases, leaving the therefore be it resolved. Is there any discussion or questions? Let's call for it. So this would be the statute change to add mountain lions to the, so the MSGA could argue for mountains to be added to the list of ant predators that could be, the LLB board could reimburse for. Are we ready for the vote? I can't see what's going on. We'll call for the vote. Everybody can vote now.
So there is a question about why mountain lions aren't included in the therefore be it resolved.
So the question was asked why mountain lions are not included in the therefore be it resolved. Do you want me to take a stab at that, Jay, or would you like to speak to it?
Go ahead.
All right, I got the green light. I think the two issues may be a little bit convoluted in my opinion. I think the mountain lions was an effort to get them reimbursed as mentioned before. And if you notice the therefore be it resolved, I think the key word there is the multiplier. I think it was a meeting or two back where we talked, was it Idaho, I believe, had a multiplier on their loss board. And I think this resolution would speak to the multiplier, and the mountain lion would not include an animal that got a multiplier. Pretty close, Jay? Would entertain amendments, or to strike the amendment, I guess, and just pass. Boy, this is tough up here blind. I can't see what's going on. All right, the motion passed. Amendment passed. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Kirk. Next up is Landowner Recreation and Wildlife Committee. Steve Alfelman is the chair. He is not here today. We're going to move into recommended renew policies. Again, we're going to work on these en masse. We are going to work through about 7 of them here, it looks like. And if you would like one of them set aside, please message us in the chat. We'll go back and remove that and vote on what is left. So for now, we're going to start by reading through these. We're going to start with LR 004. Oh, we're going to break for a second. Good to go. Excellent. LR 004, alternate wildlife management. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA recommends that new strategies be implemented by the Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to control populations, including harvest-based hunting seasons that achieve harvest quotas. Again, these are recommended renew. There are no amendments to them. This is straight out of our policy book. LR 012, formation of grazing districts. Be it resolved, MSGA encourages the consideration of grazing districts in all counties that utilize public lands for grazing, as the formation of such districts would assist in offsetting costs with public land issues. Third, LR 013, public forest land management. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA encourages the U.S. Departments of Interior and Agriculture and the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation to employ management practices that best economically utilize public land resources, and that said management practices concentrate on reducing fire hazards and include the use of grazing to do so. Recommend renew LR 014, use of fire damaged resources. Be it resolved, MSGA and the Montana Public Lands Council support timely and wise use of burned state and federal lands through reasonable salvage timber and grazing programs that are beneficial to the long-term use of renewable resources. Recommended renew LR 018, weed control. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA monitors updates and revisions to the Montana Weed Management Plan and evaluates avenues of state and federal funding to implement the plan and recommends appropriate actions. Recommended renew LR 019, alternative energy generation. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA supports individual producers' ability to market alternative energy and beneficial. Next, recommended renew LR 026, special season hunt. Resolved, MSGA opposes any efforts by FWP to further restrict the ability to harvest animals where special hunts would address the problem. Last one, LR 040, per capita funding. Recommended renew. Therefore, be it directed, MSGA actively engages with the Board of Livestock to ensure adequate and sustainable funding level for the predator control program. I lied, we have one more. Recommended renew LR 041, wolf license revenue. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA seeks legislation that would require FWP to spend no less than 25% of the proceeds from sale of wolf licenses to mitigating or reducing wolf impacts on livestock and wildlife through direct and/or indirect funding of USDA wildlife services, and 25% of the proceeds to the Department of Livestock Loss Board. And be it further resolved, MSGA requests FWP to actively pursue wolf management strategies that harvest wolves in areas that have highest impact on livestock and wildlife. Do we have any of these that we'd like to pull aside and discuss? If not, we will vote en masse. Please comment if you would like one set aside.
Larry Burns said yes on the recommended renew LR. So does that mean,
Which number? LR. Larry, if you could let us know.
So can you say where are you,
No, we're good. Okay, so we're going to vote en masse. We're going to vote to renew all of these policies. Please send us your name and vote, your full name and your vote, yes or no. If you're in a group setting, please give us the name of every individual and how they vote. Please send those in through the chat feature. We are voting on recommended renews without change of LR 004, LR 012, LR 013, LR 014, LR 018, LR 019, LR 026, LR 040, and LR 041. Please let us know your vote in your chat, your full name and how you vote, please. In a group setting, we need every name and every person's vote. Again, voting en masse, no amendments, renew as recommended. We're still taking votes. Okay, looks like everything passed. Thank you very much. Next one coming up is a recommend amend. This was submitted by the Crazy Mountain Stock Growers, LR 038, opposition to use of ballot initiatives. Whereas the Montana Constitution provides for the use of citizens' initiative to create laws outside of the legislative process, and whereas the citizens' initiative process has been used to restrict or eliminate certain hunting, fishing, and trapping, and whereas the applied science of wildlife management should direct the legislature and Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Commission in the creation of governing statute and rule. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA rejects the use of ballot initiatives as a means to make law regarding FWP matters. There is a strike-through line. Be it further resolved, MSGA supports protecting Montana fish and game management from ballot initiative by 1, increasing the number of signatures recorded and counties represented for any initiative that addresses fish and game law. 2, requiring full and complete economic analysis of local and statewide economic impacts of the proposed initiative concerning fish and game law. If there's discussion, please message us in the chat. This is a recommend amend LR 038, opposition to use of ballot initiatives. Do we have any questions or amendments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, we're going to take a vote. Please vote by submitting your full name and how you vote in the chat on LR 038, opposition to the use of ballot initiatives. Please send in your vote now. If you're in a group setting, send everybody's name and how they vote, please. Currently voting on LR 038. Votes are coming in on LR 038. We have no questions. Please continue sending in your votes. Okay, we have passed. Moving ahead, recommended amend to LR 024, use of habitat acquisition funds for conservation easements. Be it resolved, MSGA opposes the release of any 526 Habitat Montana monies for the purchase of conservation easements within hunting districts until the population quotas agreed upon for big game population objectives in that hunting district are met. Recommended amendment of LR 024. Are there any questions or discussion? Please send it to us in the chat. Any questions on LR 024? Very good. Let's move ahead on the vote. Please vote on the recommended amendment of LR 024. Vote in the chat your full name and how you vote. If you're in a group, send us all your names and how they vote. Please. Voting on recommended amendment of LR 024, use of habitat acquisition funds for conservation easements. Votes are coming in. Votes are still coming in on LR 024, use of habitat acquisition funds. Voting on LR 024. And it has passed. Very good. Thank you. Next one up, and the last one in this section, is going to be a recommended delete, LR 044, statewide bison's EIS. There's a note here that says in January of 2020, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks released a decision on the bison EIS. MSGA currently has a bison policy in joint AHLU 004 bison relocation conditions that addresses bison management. This policy will be scratched in favor of keeping the other one in place. We have replaced it already. Is there any discussion on scratching LR 044? Please let us know in the chat. We'll be striking it from the policy booklet. Any discussion on LR 044? Okay, we're going to go to the vote. Please vote on striking LR 044 statewide bison in the chat. Your full name and how you vote. Group setting, all names and how you vote. We are voting on striking LR 044 from the policy book, statewide bison EIS, which was replaced by joint AHLU 004. We're taking our votes. Please send your vote in through chat. Still collecting votes, LR 044. Okay, looks like it has passed. That has been struck from our book. Moving on, Land Use Committee. Chris King is our chair, Jacob Smith, vice chair. They are not here today. I will continue running this program. We're going to start with resolutions that we have for recommend renew. We have a list of those. Again, we're going to go through these en masse. If you would like one set aside, please give us the number in the text box on your chat and we will pull that aside. Otherwise, we're going to read through these, vote en masse. We're going to start with LU 028, use of eminent domain to condemn private property. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA opposes the use of eminent domain by municipalities and local government to condemn private property for the sole purpose of economic gain or development for individuals and or corporations. And be it further resolved that in situations where properties are condemned, MSGA supports compensation to landowners based on highest and best use for such land. Next one for recommended renew, LU 029, injunction review. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA supports state and federal legislation that would prohibit court-ordered injunctions preventing historically permitted grazing pending completion of agency processes. Next, recommended review, LU 030, manure and CERCLA EPCRA liability. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA aggressively opposes the application of CERCLA or EPCRA to livestock operations or livestock waste and to support state or federal legislation to implement that clarification. Next up on recommended renew, if you do want one of these set aside, please give us the number in the chat window. Recommended renew, LU 045, Land and Water Conservation Fund. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA supports elimination of the funding for land acquisition in the Land Water Conservation Fund, and be it further resolved that any funding that is slated for land acquisition be used to eliminate the growing national debt in lieu of more land purchase. Recommend renew, LU 046, Antiquities Act reform. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA supports congressional action by our duly elected federal, state, county, and city officials that will amend this act to include federal and state congressional approval of possible monument designations or action that will abolish this act altogether. And be it further resolved, MSGA supports a change in policy that requires any designation of lands under the Antiquities Act only be possible through a request originating from a majority vote of the people of Montana or their representatives in the Montana State Legislature. Next up on recommended renew, LU 048 Energy Access Agreements. Be it resolved, MSGA supports legislation requiring oil, mineral, and gas companies to make a good faith effort to reach an access agreement prior to moving forward with exploration. Last one on recommended renew, LU 052 Montana Pesticide Program. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA supports Montana State University Extension retaining the education and delivery of the pesticide education training program. So we have a list of recommended renew policies in here: LU 028, LU 029, LU 030, LU 045, LU 046, LU 048, LU 052. Are there any that need to be set aside for discussion? Otherwise, we will vote en masse. Okay, seeing none, we will vote en masse. Please send your vote in the chat window with your name and how you vote, yes or no. In a group setting, please send us all names and how each person votes. Again, recommend renew of a host of land use policies. We are voting on recommend renew LU 028, 029, 030, 045, 046, 048, and 052. Please send in your votes, voting en masse to renew all of these. Okay, everything is passed. Thank you very much. Moving ahead to recommend amend. This was brought by Phillips County Livestock Association, LU 047, BLM grazing leases. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA requests that these lease lands be reallocated to area cattle sheep producers under the current lease agreements that other cattle and sheep producers using BLM land have, and we're striking the next further resolved, adding be it further resolved, MSGA is opposed to a livestock use designation change from bovine ovine to any other species. This is recommended amend LU 047, be it further resolved, MSGA is opposed to livestock use designation change from bovine ovine to any other species. Is there discussion? If there's discussion on this, please send it in the chat box. Still waiting on discussion. If anybody has discussion on that, please send it in the chat window. This is on LU 047, BLM grazing leases. Okay, let's vote on that. Please vote on LU 047, send it in your chat box. Let us know your full name and how you vote. LU 047 BLM grazing leases. Be it further resolved, MSGA is opposed to livestock use designation change from bovine ovine to any other species. Please send your votes in the chat window on LU 047 BLM grazing leases amendment. We're collecting votes. LU 047, please give us your full name and how you vote. Votes are coming in on LU 047, BLM grazing leases. Recommend amend. Okay, it passed. Thank you very much. Moving on to our first new resolution, repurposing report on APR submitted by Fergus County Livestock Association. Whereas the American Prairie Reserve's APR long-term goal is to replace production livestock on Bureau of Land Management grazing leases with non-consumptive bison. And whereas APR's proposed change of class of livestock from cattle to bison on BLM grazing allotments in Phillips and Valley counties are currently being considered by the BLM. And whereas Save the Cowboy, a grassroots movement, and Montana Natural Resources Coalition commissioned the analysis of the Taylor Grazing Act and subsequent federal land use regulations. And whereas the results of that analysis have been compiled in the repurposing of federally reserved Taylor grazing districts for wildlife rewilding, a statutory, administrative, and legal analysis repurposing report. The results demonstrate that a BLM special use permit is federally regulated to be compatible with production ag uses as determined by the Taylor Grazing Act and other pertinent regulations. This report has been submitted to the Department of Interior, including Montana State Director of BLM, John Melhoff. Therefore, be it resolved, MSGA fully supports the findings of the repurposing report and requests the Department of Interior comply with federal regulations as identified in the repurposing report. Do we have discussion on this proposal? Is there anybody that would like to speak to this? If you have a question, please send it to us in the chat. We do have a question. Discussion on new resolution. Please define non-consumptive bison from Dr. Rankin. Would anybody like to speak to that? The question is discussion on new resolution. Please define non-consumptive bison.
I think we have somebody here. We're just going to try to patch it.
Okay, we're going to try to patch somebody.
Over to you guys.
Okay, hi, Todd Olson. We need to take the director's name out. We don't want to personalize that in case that changes. That's a good amendment. The non-consumptive tries to differentiate between production agriculture and wildlife. That's what we were going for there.
Okay, the definition of non-consumptive bison is to separate that from production agriculture and wildlife. Okay, and Ross, do you need more clarification? Or do you have clarification for us?
Stay there, Laura Boyce, you're on mute. Unmute yourself.
Who needs to unmute?
Laura Boyce.
Laura Boyce, please unmute your microphone. If you'd like to speak. Laura, please unmute your microphone if you'd like to speak.
We can't tell them we can't hear him. So
We can't hear you speak.
click on the microphone button and to remove the red line through it.
Click on the microphone button that has the red line through it so you can speak.
How's that?
There we go.
Okay.
Go, yep, go ahead.
I guess the question about the non-consumptive has been answered. I guess my comments would be this is a report that was put into place, by the local producers in central Montana with concerns about the conservation movement coming in and repurposing these Taylor Grazing Act district lands. And I think it's a good move for livestock producers to request that the BLM, utilize the proper procedures when looking at change of use that are really as large as what they're looking at doing. Taylor Grazing Act is pretty specific about the purposes of these lands, what they were reserved for. And this report is just stating that they need to consider that and demonstrate that if they're going to change the use, it has to be compatible with production agriculture. And so that's basically, in a nutshell, there's really a lot to it. If you unpack the report, there's It's a lot broader, but I would say that's as good as we can do in a one-liner about what it covers. And I think it's really important that the stock growers get behind this and make a statement, because there's a lot of years ahead of us with the environmentalists, the conservation groups really pushing to change the whole dynamic of what Montana is and what we do out here. So I just would really, ask that you support this and recognize the importance of it.
Thank you. We have a note here that Fish and Wildlife defines non-consumptive as being watched or studied without being killed. Thank you, Deanna. And there's a link inside the chat box if you'd like to follow from savethecowboy.net. You guys can follow that link if you wish. We have two modifications that I'd like to make as friendly amendments. One is to strike the state director of BLM's name and leave it general as just state BLM director. We'll just strike John Melhoff. And the second would be to insert a new whereas under the fourth whereas, where it comes in as this report has been submitted. The last line of the fourth whereas would be a separate whereas. Is there any discussion or any comments or concerns about doing a friendly amendment to those? We have one question. I'm concerned that their wild sky program and the fact that they allow some bison to be killed would cause problems with this wording. Would you like to expound on that? Linda, would you like to speak to that? Okay, that's a comment. There's a comment, those are domestic bison. Anybody have any concerns with friendly amendments to strike the BLM director's name and add another whereas in there? If not, we'll do that and keep moving forward. Linda says, not really available to chat, just concerned about non-consumptive description. Do we have any other amendments to add to this? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? We're going to move it to a vote. Please vote on the new resolution repurposing report on APR. In your text chat, send us your full name and how you vote, yes or no. If you're in a group, send us everybody's name and each, please. Please use your vote chat at this time. Repurposing report on APR. Okay, we're taking votes right now on the new resolution repurposing report on APR, including the friendly amendments. Votes are still coming in on repurposing report. Okay, it is passed. Moving ahead to the next new resolution, Big Sky Country National Heritage Area, submitted by Dana Darlington. Whereas national heritage areas are designated by Congress as places where natural, cultural, and historic resources form a nationally important landscape, and whereas the proposed NHA boundary for the area includes all of Cascade County and portions of Choteau and Lewis and Clark counties. And whereas a national heritage area is a legislative process and there is no application or nomination process, whereas there is significant opposition of including private property into an NHA, which will be managed or controlled by a private, unelected, unaccountable entity and will interfere with private property rights. And whereas private property owners have no ability to remove their property from this designation, therefore be it resolved, MSGA opposes the proposed Big Sky Country Natural Heritage Area designation. there anybody who would like to speak to this? I believe we have Dana. Dana, would you like to come speak to this?
Thank you, Justin. Welcome, everyone. Big Sky Country National Heritage Area is new to some people. They're just learning about their private land being affected by this designation. I first heard about them a few years ago, 4, 5, 6 years ago. Went to a couple meetings. Their original proposed designation for a heritage area was half of Lewis and Clark County, all of Cascade County, all of Choteau County, half of Fergus County, and parts of Blaine and Phillips. National heritage areas are designated by Congress with appropriating funds administered through the National Park Service. The local heritage board is non-elected with no oversight, and I attended several meetings this fall in Fort Benton, Belt, Cascade, and Great Falls with a general consensus of private landowners in attendance strongly opposing this proposed designation. NHAs draw attention to cultural, natural, and historic sites and the heritage of the area by promoting tourism, but by also using private property to achieve their goal. I argue it is not their heritage to promote or sell. It belongs to the people who protect the land in order to make a living off it and hopefully pass it on to the next generation. So I strongly urge a vote of non-support, of support of our resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Is there any further discussion on this proposed amendment? I'm sorry, I misspoke. This is not a proposed amendment. This is a proposed resolution. Any further discussion? No, let's go ahead and put it to vote. Please submit your vote in the new resolution for the Big Sky Country National Heritage Area in the chat. Let us know yes or no. Give us your full name, how you vote in the chat. Again, voting on Big Sky Country National Heritage Area. If you're in a group setting, give us everyone's name and their individual vote, please. Still taking votes. Big Sky Country National Heritage Area proposed resolution. Okay, it passed. Moving ahead. Thank you very much. The last one for this group today is a proposed resolution on wilderness study areas. It was brought to us by Southwest Montana Stockgrowers Association. I'm hoping there's somebody that can come on and speak to this. I'm going to read this to you. It's quite lengthy. Whereas the Bureau of Land Management's wilderness study recommendations to Congress from the President of the United States in January of 1993 was to exclude the Hidden Pasture Creek Wilderness Study Area located west of Dell, Montana, total acreage of 15,509 acres. And whereas the area has been basically set aside as wilderness as a result of inaction for over 27 years, making it difficult and in some cases impossible for the residents of Southwest Montana to conduct business and recreate in this area. And whereas the southern boundary of this WSA is the county road, which has historically been and remains the principal transportation route for those living and using the Big Sheep Basin for ranching and recreation, and by the BLM, the Department of State Lands, and the United States Forest Service. And whereas the local electric cooperative, Vigilante Electric, in the process of providing electrical service to the area, has their power line crisscrossing over the road because the canyon is narrow, crooked, and very steep, thereby putting portions of the line in the WSA, which subjects the utility to all the WSA restrictions, thereby limiting the access, maintenance, repair, or improvement to this line. And whereas the WSA designation precludes the Beaverhead County Road Department from addressing transportation safety issues, such as being able to widen the road to prevent head-on and sideswipe accidents, which have involved travelers unfamiliar with the road, area ranchers, and even the Lima school bus, which in the past travels a gravel road twice daily when school is in session. And whereas the only suitable angular-shaped rock that meets NRCS standards in the southern half of Beaverhead County that is accessible to larger dump trucks and machinery is located immediately along the north side of this county road, the WSA. And whereas one local rancher's center pivot crosses approximately 2.5 acres of land included in the WSA, while at the same time 8 acres of his deeded land is within the WSA, causing said landowner at a great expense to install 2 barricades and an auto reverse option to keep the pivot from crossing that portion of the WSA, because the BLM will not trade the 2 parcels or permit the landowner an agricultural use lease, even though said landowner is allowed to travel through the area on an improved gravel road and flood irrigate said area. And whereas BLM livestock grazing permittee is under a great deal of restriction when maintaining current structures and finds it near impossible to add new structures that would be beneficial to grazing. Whereas the east boundary of the WSA is within 5 miles of the town of Dell, Interstate 15, Highway 91, the Union Pacific Railroad track, and has historically since the early 1900s been used for logging, coal mining, and therefore has numerous old wall roads, as well as the rock quarry that has been utilized by residents, local contractors, the Beaverhead County Road Department, and the Union Pacific Railroad for decades. And whereas area residents, the local telephone and electrical utilities, and the commissioners of Beaverhead County have written letters and sent petitions to our state senators and representatives asking that the hidden pasture WSA be released from further wilderness consideration as per BLM recommendations. Therefore, be it resolved that MSGA be in favor of and pledges support for these groups requesting during the next session of the United States Congress that the hidden pasture creek WSA be removed from any further wilderness study designation. Are there any questions on this proposed resolution, wilderness study areas coming out of Southwest Montana? Do we have
Jeff Johnson.
Jeff Johnson? Are you able to speak?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Ron, thank you.
All right. Thanks for your time considering this. This resolution started out quite a few years ago from the state conservation districts. The purpose of it is to take just the hidden pasture wilderness study area by itself, not include all the other wilderness study areas, and get it pulled out of the wilderness study area. The BLM has recommended that it not be in a WSA. The conservation districts are in favor of this. Many other groups are. Some of you might be interested in the fact that the pivot that it talks about that it goes through is actually on our ranch. This hidden pasture is one of our BLM allotments. It's extremely hard to get anything done in there, even to take any kind of equipment into these wilderness study areas to fix up your water tanks, springs. It'd be impossible to put a drift fence or a cross fence in it. The reason there's so many whereases here, we wanted to explain a lot of points that this shouldn't be a wilderness study area. All those whereases explain that. Also with me is Byron Martinell. He's chairman of the Beaverhead Conservation District, and I'm sure he could add some more stuff here, and a good resource on this resolution.
Well, yes, we thank the Montana Legislature Ad Hoc Committee for addressing this issue again. This was brought up in 1977, I think, after Congress asked the BLM to come up with these study areas, and when I approached the BLM about it, the local office in Dillon, they said that the boundary was drawn up by part-time summer employees who really didn't have any idea of the ramifications of the boundary they came up with, such as the county road, where one side is wilderness, the other isn't. And they admitted that after they reviewed it, that they didn't want it as wilderness. So as one of our county commissioners said, the paperwork has been laying on someone's desk in Washington, D.C. for about 30 years to get it released as wilderness study. But of course, the environmental groups want to retain it as a study area because it's the same as de facto wilderness then. But if those that are opposed to it would just come out on the ground and take a look and see how absurd the boundary is. Sorry about being so frank, but that's basically the problem. It's just the boundary is not where it ought to be. There's parts of it that should be wilderness, but by the time you jigsaw puzzle those portions out, it doesn't meet the criteria as far as acreage. So the Beaver Head Conservation District, mainly with my impulse to start with, brought this resolution forth, and it's just time that something needs to be done. You either need to readjust the boundaries, or best case scenario is just release the whole thing from study area.
I've got a comment to make too. Jeff Johnson again, one more comment. Some of the ad hoc committee talked with Steve Daines, our senator, and he said it'd be best just to take one wilderness study area at a time. Maybe we could win. Then this could be used as a template to get some of the other study areas out. And if there's any questions, either Byron or I can answer, we'd sure do it.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further discussion on this proposed resolution from the floor? We do. We have a question coming. This is from Nancy Aero. I'm in favor of this resolution, but can we recommend all information in the proposed resolution be retained by the MSGA lobbyists for their needs, but ask for this to be reduced to only the general intent and brought back to vote so we don't lengthen our policy so much for this one situation?
So is that
Okay, I'm going to repeat the question. This is from Nancy. I'm in favor of this resolution, but can we recommend all information in the proposed resolution be retained by the MSGA lobbyists for their needs, but ask for this to be reduced to only the general intent and brought back to vote so we don't lengthen our policy so much for this one situation? I believe it's reduced the size of the actual resolution into the core information. Is that what we're getting at? Will you guys take that as a friendly amendment, Southwest?
Yes, I believe we will. That as long as it doesn't change the intent of the resolution.
So is this something we can work on and bring back to second resolution cleaned up? Okay, we're going to do that. We're going to take that as a friendly amendment, that we're going to trim this to make it down and dirty and bring it back to second. Next question. Do you only want this to be reviewed in the next session of Congress, and should it be more broad? Southwest, can you speak to that?
Really haven't considered that, I guess. It'd be fine if it was broader. I don't think it'd hurt one thing.
We don't want it to be broader to cover other wilderness.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't cover other wilderness areas, wilderness study areas, we think that'd be a failure of the whole thing if we did that.
Okay, so we can keep it to the one wilderness study area, but make it more broad in congressional mandate.
By broader, I mean review.
Okay, one more question. This is from Perry, who brought the last question. By broader, I mean reviewed until it happens.
I guess I don't understand what you mean there.
Perry, do you have specific language you would like inserted? Jay, do you want to speak to it?
Just kind of looking at the questions, my intent, or I think what the intent of the question is, it does specifically say the next session in Congress. We do understand a lot of times in these kind of scenarios, it takes multiple sessions to request this. So it may not happen in the next session. It may be subsequent sessions. So I think that's what maybe the question was. If we just say that we will take this to Congress and this will be our intent, maybe that I think is what we're kind of looking at. So
I think that's fine from the standpoint of the Southwest Stockmans. There again, I think the whole idea of this is to go to the state legislature and then on to the federal lines, right? That's still what everybody's thinking about. If it takes several tries, it takes several tries.
We have a comment from Maggie. When you delete the whereas, it makes the phrase "these groups requesting" meaningless. Is this changing the whereas in the last line that you're proposing? Maggie, can you let us know which whereas?
I bet she means all of the warehouses. When you delete all the warehouses, like you did.
Let's give her some time to type.
Yep, we'll give her a minute.
Ask me now read.
The groups are mentioned in the whereases. You take away the mention of the groups. Is there more to that? Yeah, show me where you're making the change.
Well, right, it's the last. Okay. Hold on just.
Okay, therefore be it resolved that MSGA be in favor of and pledges support the removal of the Hidden Pasture Creek WSA be removed from any further wilderness study designation. So that's striking of these groups requesting during the next session of the United States Congress.
Yes, that looks like it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Reading that was the strikeout. Is this something that we can resolve before second reading and bring it back clarified?
I think the way you just stated it would be fine.
Okay, so we're going to do a vote with this friendly amendment. If it's a friendly amendment, we don't need a vote. Okay, so we can vote on the whole thing at this point, unless there's more discussion. Do we have more questions? Be removed should also be removed. So change to therefore be it resolved, the MSG be in favor of and pledges support of the Hidden Pasture Creek WSA being removed. So remove the dual removal. We can clean that up. Yes. Okay, any other changes we'd like to see? Thank you, Nicholas. Okay, let's go for the vote. Please vote on the proposed wilderness study area policy. Send us your vote in the text box. Give us your full name and your vote. If you're in a group setting, give us everyone's name and their vote, please. Again, we're voting on the wilderness study area proposed resolution.
Yes.
Please send your vote in through the chat. We're waiting on votes. While we're doing that, I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance, and I want to thank our staff for putting this together. This has been a technical challenge. This has passed. Thank you very much. We will move ahead. I'm going to transfer it over to Lane.
Thank you.
All right, Justin, thank you. You did a great job, except for you slaughtered that one French last name. Just think it's Eero. Eero, yeah. The more you know. I got you, Phillips County folks. All right, folks. Hey, thank you so much. It was a great session there. And again, it's difficult to learn these new processes, but hey, we're creating that policy for the future of this organization. We just, before we wrap up this committee, we just want to remind everyone that the Stock Growers and the Stock Growers Foundation are auctioning off a John Deere Gator and a C250 cattle waterer over on the online auction platform. You can bid online by texting BEEF to 843-606-5995. And a special thanks to Frontline Ag Solutions for donating the John Deere Gator and the Concrete Waterer. And I also heard that maybe Just Drainage was going to be offering some type of open bar somewhere too. I got a message from our Eastern Montana members as well. But hey, we are going to wrap up this committee, and we will be moving into our Tax, Finance, and Ag Policy Committee. That is our final committee of the night. So we will be checking out of this platform and running on over into our tax, finance, and ag policy. I'm Lane Nordland. We will see you over on that other committee if you are joining us there. We'll be right back.